your bag and get up.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Episode 5. Talkbots.
5 Alive.
Talkbots.
Beep boop, beep boop, boop boop, boop boop, boop boop, boop.
This week, Karl and Adam talk about money for nothing. We're going to talk about universal basic income.
Well, we're going to try to.
Yeah,
We got some things to say.
that's for sure.
I was wondering about
Kind
this.
of a
Yeah.
carryover from last week's episode where we
It
talked
was.
about robotics and how it's going to kill a bunch of jobs, and what the hell are we going to do about it?
I laughed about this yesterday or whenever about this topic because you're going to have to work hard at devil's advocate because we're both on the same page.
True.
This might be like the lamest. Feel like you'll have some. And
I don't think we have to play hard as
agree.
devil's advocate because we just
No, I-
have to parrot the bullshit. I mean,
Not
we just have
bullshit,
to parrot
but-
the things that people have been saying why universal basic income would not work. So
Yeah.
let's talk about what it is first and why some people think it's necessary.
See title.
Yes, money for nothing. So here's kind of a layman's description, maybe, of
Once upon a time.
what UBI is. The idea behind universal basic income is there are too many people under the poverty line and dependent upon the government for a variety of different kinds of handouts already. You know, you've got your EI, you've got mother's allowance, you've got the GST rebate in Canada. I don't know what the Americans have, in case Americans happen to be listening to this podcast. Of course, the more social countries in Europe have a variety of different things to help people out under a variety of circumstances. What really brought this conversation to a fore was COVID, because all of a sudden you had a bunch of people who couldn't work because their businesses kind of evaporated, and the Canadian government went and invented this handout called CERB, C-E-R-B. The idea behind it was to try to help people survive until the pandemic was over so that they could go back to work and become contributing members, tax-paying members of society again. The problem is someone's got to pay for this, and it's going to be everybody. And so people were saying, well, had we already been using a universal basic income model, we wouldn't even be having this problem right now because of how it works. The way it's supposed to work, right now, all of the social programs that do exist in Canada anyway, cost money to run. That's because there's a bunch of people sitting at desks deciding who qualifies for the money or not, and find, extraordinarily clever ways to decide, no, you don't qualify for this because of X. Like EI is really bad for this because you pay into it the whole time you're working, and then when you need it, they've conveniently come up with reasons why you can't have it.
Yeah, I suppose that is absolutely true, but there's also just the fact, not to be too cynical about there, just look for ways to say no. A different aspect of the cynicism is just
Prevent
the giant
abuse.
machine. That's true.
Part
But
of
my
it.
point being is that it's just the government is giant.
Yes.
It just creates red tape,
Right.
regardless of even if it's a process to try and deny you or whatever. It's just bloat.
Right.
Right.
Something they're really good at.
Yeah, it's just bloat, regardless of if it's a goal to make you fill out more paperwork because of a new process or procedure that's built,
Right.
or an effort to deny you
Right.
because of whatever reason. And that is very, 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 very expensive.
Yes. So expensive that the experts have suggested, and, who knows whether they're right or not, but they are supposedly experts. Of course, our society has now grown to not trust what experts say, but I digress. The experts have said that if a country like ours were to adopt a universal basic income, the overhead of running it basically drops to practically zero. Because now there is no, are you breathing and over 18? You get the money, period.
Yep.
You're working, you still get it. You're going to school, still getting it. Handicapped, you're getting it. Dead, okay, now you don't get it anymore.
Right.
And the idea being the amount that you would get per month if you are a living, breathing adult is based on some magical formula that at the time, because it would be subject to cost of living increases, would be just enough money to survive.
Yep.
Like barely.
$2,000 a month.
Give or take. Plus or minus
Yeah.
X hundreds of
And
dollars.
province-based, probably.
And province-based to suit the economy that you're in, exactly. The cost of living of where you happen to live. So would it be enough to pay rent and food and some basic utilities? Yes. Would it also be enough to go on vacation every 6 months and own an Xbox and go to the movies every couple of months and own a vehicle? No. No. You want that shit? You're going to need to at least work part-time.
Yep.
But you're not going to get anywhere because you're still going to be just having enough money to support your lifestyle.
Right.
So if you want to get ahead, you're going to need to get an education and then finally a career that earns you enough money that you don't need the UBI anymore, and then you start banking it for a rainy day. And that's kind of how the system is designed to work. Now, I don't personally think that UBI could work on its own, because another barrier to making one's life better in this country is the cost of post-secondary education. We've got people racking up a lot of money, not as bad as in the States, but racking up a lot of money buying an education for which they don't even know whether they're going to be able to use when they're done.
Right.
Because our education is that messed up. They'll actually let people learn shit for which there is no marketable use for right now, and probably won't be when they're done their studies either. So you've got a lot of people with degrees, working at Starbucks or Best Buy because that's all they can find right now. And so I think if Canada were to take a risk and try to adopt a UBI model, there would have to be a way of making education affordable as well, so that you could live off of UBI and still afford to go to school.
That's absolutely true. Right. And that, see, from my perspective, is that is not a classification or a definition of why UBI wouldn't work in this country. That would be something that I think is phase 2,
Right.
3, or whatever.
Right.
From my perspective, UBI's job is to make it so people don't have to choose between the fucking lights and something to eat.
Right.
Right? And
To
post-secondary...
raise the poverty line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
That
actually
is the
raise
ultimate
people
goal.
above the poverty line,
That's right.
I should say. Yes.
Yeah. The goal is to eliminate or drastically reduce poverty.
Mm-hmm.
And post-secondary will maybe get you there, but giving people money so that they can live is, I think, a project success.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the notion that people would still have to work at Best Buy and shit like that stuff would still exist.
Mm-hmm.
And because maybe or maybe not, those kinds of jobs would be automated. And it's debatably now that you can go on the internet and buy all those things, and you're not talking to Kevin at fucking Future Shop or whatever. the conversation about post-secondary being reasonably priced or subsidized fully by the government is like episode 6 of our podcast. Like that's a whole other.
Oh yeah, totally.
Right. That's a whole other bag of beans.
Totally.
It's fucking huge.
I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned it because I
Right.
don't think one could work without the other long term.
Yeah, you're probably right. Because the debate is, well, not the debate. Sorry, that's not the right word. Something that you see touted for UBI is certainly part of post-secondary, but a big driver is entrepreneurship, is people starting their own businesses.
Oh yeah.
And that is the big one.
Oh yeah.
And like for me, it's always about raising the poverty line, but because I'm not below the poverty line, I look at it from a middle class person. And in our living situation, only one of us has a job, the other one is taking care of a child.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have money to just throw around. We're at a point or coming to a point where one of our UBI aspects, the CERB money,
Mm-hmm.
has now disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
That has to make us make a decision. And when I think about UBI, I think about the position that I'm in now, is that I have to get a job that I probably don't fucking want.
Right.
Right? And if there was a universal basic income,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have to. I could then get a job where I am fulfilled.
Right.
Be it even the job that I'm currently doing now,
Right.
if that's what it is.
Right.
So it's interesting to hear the biggest benefits of UBI from people in different wage groups.
Mm-hmm.
Like dual income families, like what does UBI get them, is totally different from what it gives my family.
Absolutely.
Which is
Absolutely.
really interesting. My point being is that I don't know if the post-secondary part comes into it. If we keep out the argument about inflation at this point, which
Yes.
is the argument.
Yes.
If we keep that out of it, long term, it would just be about keeping people out of poverty. That's the most important thing.
Yes. And if you said, okay, all right, we've talked about that side of it,
Yeah.
and how UBI would benefit those that are currently under the poverty line by lifting them above it. I'm glad you mentioned the entrepreneurship side of it, because that's exactly what came out of, and it's unfortunate that both our governments and our media did very little to really scream this to the rest of Canada. When they did the latest modern UBI experiment in Ontario under their last Liberal government, when they talked to the people who were on it toward the end of the experiment before Ford got elected and got rid of it completely without even looking at it, the people that were on it basically said, "Oh yeah, this is great." And the reason it's great is because it, for one example, gave us the ability to start a business and use that UBI money to bridge our expenses until the business started generating money, which under normal circumstances isn't something a person can typically do.
Right. That's why businesses fucking fail.
Right.
All the time.
Or you have to spend a lot of time saving money to act as that bridge money and invest in the business.
Right.
And a lot of people never make it to that point because you just can't get to that level.
Yep.
Unless you happen to be extraordinarily lucky or well
Huge amount
organized
of
or a
capital.
combination of both. Yeah. And what a lot of people don't realize in Canada is that UBI is neither new nor has ever been proven to be untenable or impractical, because they even did an experiment with UBI in Manitoba. And I think it happened in the 70s. And when they asked the people who were on it how it changed their lives, it in general gave them a sense of freedom to be able to do things they ordinarily would never have been able to do. mothers got to stay home and be mothers if they wanted to, and only maybe work a day or two a week instead of 5, and still get by. And I'm not talking about mothers who are married with a father living at home. I'm talking single mothers. Because now you don't have to worry about childcare, which is a huge expense for single parents and professional couples alike. And again, that's something that UBI can help with. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It's something that offers a different set of benefits depending on what circumstance you happen to find yourself in. And now we come to the flip side.
Well, hold on. Before we go to the flip side,
Yep.
Karl, I want to, just using my own example, is last night I was sitting around thinking about how I don't want to come into this conversation super ignorant. I'm going to, full disclosure, I'm pretty ignorant about all the facets of UBI.
Mm-hmm.
I know high level what it is.
Yeah.
I know high level some of the problems and stuff like that.
Right.
But anyway, so I sat down and I started to think about how it works and how it could work. And it dawned on me that the social programs, the financial social programs that exist in this country to help people out are a form of UBI.
Yes.
Right? So the one that really came to my mind is the childcare benefit that my wife and I get for having a kid.
Right.
And it's not an insignificant amount of money.
Right.
It's about $300 a month.
Yeah.
That $300 a month essentially pays for all of my daughter's preschool for the year, if you fire it over the year, and all of her food.
Okay.
Or all of her food, all of her clothes, all of her entertainment. That pays for all of that stuff.
Okay.
Which then, again, as I had mentioned previously...
And that's all? It covers it pretty securely?
Yeah, I would say.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because what is that? 72... I can't do the math right now.
Right.
But it's a significant amount of money. But what it also does, is like I was mentioning before, is that it facilitates the ability for me to be able to stay home and take care of my daughter full time.
Right.
Right? If we weren't in a pandemic right now, then I probably would be working, and that money would then, it would just go into the pile.
Yeah.
Right? And it does now go into the pile, but that pile now has a larger purpose, which is helping a single income household.
Yeah.
Even at $300 a month, the help that it provides is so significant. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And to even fathom that number going up, when I was on the CERB money, stress didn't exist as much, financial stress. We weren't. The budget was a little looser. You could go out for dinner and have some more entertainment, which is, I'm not suggesting that that's what you do with Krebs money, is you go out and throw it away, though there are aspects to that that are important for local economy. But my point is being mental health.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? When you don't have that money, you can't fucking spend that money.
Right.
And it just eats at you.
Well,
so
can I jump in on that topic? Because there's a phenomenon that I became aware of a few years ago that really had me going, wow. And that is, although Nordic and European countries, Western European countries, don't necessarily have a full-on UBI yet, many are thinking about it, and even though they're not actually doing it quite yet, these countries do have the kind of benefits that you are just talking about in spades, even over and above what we have.
Absolutely.
They finance starter packages for their parents, for new parents, parents of new kids. Their parental leave situation completely blows ours out of the water. And the Americans look at us and can't figure out how we do it or why we do it. Their social network, their social safety net structure is such that you are relieved of much of the kind of stress that would occupy our minds about the financial situation, and especially Americans about their financial situation day to day, and where it really came through why that was so important to them was they asked the average North American, what do you worry about day to day? What makes you lose sleep at night? What are you worried about right now? And they were bringing up things like, I'm worried about losing my job. I'm worried about getting sick and not being able to afford it. I'm worried about my kids' health. I'm worried about, am I going to be able to afford braces for my daughter? I'm worried about, how the hell am I going to pay for school? I'm worried about, and it was all these things that we have not yet found a way, especially in America, but to a certain degree in Canada too. We just don't have it as bad off because of the slightly better social safety net that we have in place. So that was the common denominator, was all the stressors were related to money, and money becoming a problem as a result of a change in circumstance,
Sure.
A sudden change in circumstance. Then they went over to Europe, where all of the safety net is even bigger, wider, better, more,
Robust.
More robust. That is exactly the word, Adam, that I was looking for. And asked them the same question. What do you worry about? I worry about whether I'm going to see my grandchild this weekend.
Right. If I'm going to have wiener schnitzel.
I worry about where I'm going to be going on vacation this year. I'm worried about, am I going to get the same disease that my mother had?
Yeah.
Nothing to do with money or money troubles as the result of a change in circumstance, because they got that stuff covered.
Yeah.
So I think you're absolutely right. If such a safety net were made available to everyone, regardless of their circumstance here, oh my God, it really would alleviate a lot of mental stress. And I think it would do wonders for the overall mental health of the population of the country. Yeah.
So I don't want to. I don't want to
agree.
ask this question. It's a devil's advocate question, and I'm going to try really hard not to have an affectation of like a weird sort of accent to it.
Let me have it.
Why should I pay for that? Why should I pay for your post-secondary or your, from the American's perspective, your health care?
I think I can answer that question. I'm going to try and put
Please know
my dream
that
politician hat on.
That's an absolute devil's advocate.
Oh, of course.
Oh,
of course.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got some myself, so don't worry. Why wouldn't you want to create that kind of a society? I mean, right now, the thing that I worry about for our society is that we continue to aim ourselves toward selfish attitudes.
I call it short-sight. It's a society driven by short-sightedness.
And selfishness.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if somebody should make a movie or a documentary about this, because I've even noticed a change, a societal change just since I grew up. Because when I grew up, I lived in a town that was in the outer extreme outskirts of Montreal. And it was a small town. It was like under 15,000 people. So, it was a very close-knit community, and everybody kind of knew everybody. And what I noticed was different about growing up in that town in that time period, which was the 70s, was that everyone kind of knew what everyone's disposition was. We knew who the people on the street were that were doing pretty good, because it was easy to tell. Who were doing okay, who were doing not so great and who were on the verge of like losing everything. So much so that the community even had an emergency center where people would donate stuff
Right.
to help out people who were on the verge of losing everything and needed to be able to, stock their houses
Yeah,
with
food bank
basic
on drugs.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then some. It was kind of like a non-profit value village, except there was no price. Everything being donated was meant to end up in the home of someone who had fallen upon bad times, fallen upon hard times. The best part was the people who ran the frickin' place knew who needed the stuff.
Right.
You didn't even have to go and ask for stuff. Everyone knew who the downtrodden in the community were, and you just magically found yourself with stuff showing up on your front step to help you out. Society today, it's very hard to be able to even pull that off today, because the majority of suburbanites drive their cars into the garage at the front of their house, and then the door closes and you don't see them again until they come out to cut their grass. And even when they're out playing, whether we're talking adult play or children's play or both, they're not in their front yard where everybody can see you. They're in their backyard behind a 6-foot fence. So no one in a modern community, especially in a medium to large size city, has any idea how anybody in their neighborhood is doing. And as a result, it's insulated us from the realities of the world. We don't really understand how the person who's not really doing so well how they even got there. Never mind how they're doing. And I think you can relate to this just as I can, because when you and I were both involved in that educational institution downtown Calgary, we took a homeless guy off the street and tried to turn him into the next entry-level IT guy, because we found out that he was smart. But because he had it in his head that he wasn't going to succeed because society was out to get him, even after being handed an opportunity to start a new life in which he could return to being a contributing member to society, he let it fall away. And I would never have been able to understand that mental block if I had never met the guy.
Right.
And that's part of where we are. So I guess that was a very long and drawn out way of saying, wouldn't you not want to create a better social net that could help more people for when they do eventually fall onto hard times?
But that's the problem with that question, is because the answer is often no. That's the fucking problem. Because what you described...
But this is what our governments are kind of for.
No, I agree. But
to show,
but our governments aren't going to move in the right direction unless the people...
They have the support, yeah,
right.
True.
So
true.
That's the issue. Like, of course, the answer is absolutely yes. I don't mind if you raise my taxes so someone can eat or a mom can take care of her kid, right?
I support that.
Right? As long as the only qualms I have about my taxes going up is that it just goes into the giant red tape machine and it's fucking squandered and wasted. But that's another conversation.
Spent on a hockey arena.
Or whatever the fuck it is, right? Or just on 7 million staff to approve a hockey arena.
Right.
Okay, but I think a problem is that the answer to the question is, do you want a society that takes care of other people? Is that there are too many people that answer no.
No.
I don't want my money that I've earned to go to somebody who hasn't earned it. And I don't, as a 42-year-old man, I don't know where that came from. It's easy for me because I only know so far back, and my experience only goes so far back. But there's some interesting data that I won't be able to articulate very well that shows that when Ronald Reagan showed up, the fucking shit hit the fan.
Oh, did it
And
ever?
the world has, United States and subsequently us,
Are still trying to recover from that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know if the word is trying to recover. Like, it's just a fucking disaster, and
Oh, I know.
it continues to be. Trickle-down economics destroyed this entire continent.
Oh, did it ever?
Right? And still continues to. Make America great again. He wants to make it great again from, like, 1986.
Well,
right?
let's make it great again for the billionaires.
Yeah, right? Back in 1940 or whatever, what was the tax rate for, like, big corporations? Like 70%? Like, it was astronomical.
It was.
To repair from the war.
And yet they survived. And thrived.
They thrived. That's what made America great.
Yes.
Was they had huge social. Anyway.
And
so,
I'm actually glad that you kind of have segued into that topic, because that perfectly frames what I wanted to say next, which is, because of what we have just said leading up to that statement about how, Reaganomics really kind of ruined it for the rest of us going forward for God knows how long we're going to spend trying to recover from that ideology. I don't think we're going to convince enough people in this country to switch to a UBI thing, even to give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we're going to end up having to focus on first, because it is a symptom of the disease, is inequity in the workforce. There is a guy, I don't know if you've heard about this guy. His name's Dan Price. You heard about this guy?
maybe.
He's from Seattle.
Okay.
And he owns this company. For those of you that have never heard of this guy, Dan Price, the story is bloody phenomenal. He was running the company and he was earning $1 million plus a year as the CEO of the company. And he thought everything was hunky-dory because, CEOs are usually, quite far removed from the day-to-day problems of the people that work for them, because they're more interested in making sure the business is running properly. And that's what they should be doing. But because CEOs are insulated from the day-to-day issues of their workers, outside of the actual functioning of the company, he walked into a manager's office to drop off some paperwork on their desk to find a manager training manual for McDonald's on their desk. And he was just like, what the hell? And he sort of went to the next person he could find and said, what's this all about? And they kind of like got into like a bit of a panic, because they didn't really think that the person who had this document on their desk would want the CEO of the company knowing that they were training to moonlight at McDonald's as a manager. And he goes, no, like, I don't want you to panic about this. She's not in trouble. I just want to know what the hell is going on. And the person said, well, what's going on, Dan, is that a person in this position cannot survive on the pay you're paying them in a city like Seattle. Sorry. And he was like flabbergasted. He didn't know what to say. And he goes, okay. He goes, I need to think about this for a little while. And he went back to his office and he kind of thought, geez, I wonder how many other people in my company are in this boat. So he went and talked to some other people, and he ended up talking to the person who was training to become a manager at McDonald's to try to get to the bottom of what was going on. And he finally had his eyes opened that the salary he was paying his workers was unsustainable. And it was preventing them from buying a home. It was preventing them from renting a decent place to live. It was preventing them from getting an education on the side to better their position. It was preventing them from having kids. It was preventing them from owning a reliable car. It meant that if they had a car and it broke down, they didn't know whether they'd be able to afford to get it back on the road again. And he did something that I wish every CEO in the world, or at least in North America, would have the balls to do. And that is, he decided he was going to take a pay cut to $70,000 a year and elevate everybody's starting salary to $70,000 a year. And anybody who was making, like the senior managers who were making like 6 figures, he said, I'm sorry, but I'm bringing you guys back down to reality. And a lot of them quit, said, screw this, we're out of here. And he was like, that's fine, I totally understand. But we've gotta recalibrate this reality.
Yep.
And see what happens. Because he kind of had an idea in his head that this was going to revolutionize everything about the people that worked for him in this company. Well, geez, he was not wrong. People suddenly could afford to have kids, buy a house, have a decent car, get an education on the side if they wanted to, go on vacation, buy stuff. And he was warned. The naysayers said, this is a communist experiment. It's gonna fail. They're gonna lose market share. They're gonna lose customers. The workers aren't going to be motivated to produce as much. To be as and they were wrong. They were wrong in every respect. The company is thriving. There are people lined up wanting to get a job there, because they finally see a company that actually cares about their workers. Mm-hmm. And they're still making money hand over foot.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And he had hoped that by being the guinea pig, trying it out and showing that it succeeded, that it would motivate, hundreds.
Womp womp.
Nope. A total of, I think at last count, 5 other companies in the U.S. adopted his model or something close to it. Mm-hmm. And the rest of corporate America basically went, not interested.
It makes me so sick that the question even comes up, or the statement even comes up that they'll be less motivated. And what kind of horse shit are you eating and then regurgitating?
I know.
If I made a lot more, a lot of money, or a lot of money, a sufficient amount of money for a job that I'm doing.
To make my life less stressful.
Yeah, I'm going to work my balls off to make sure, A, that I keep the job, and my mood is already going to be better, so inevitably you're going to work better.
Absolutely.
You're going to sleep better at night.
Yeah.
You're going to get to work on time because you can drive your fucking car.
Oh, no, you're going to show up at work and totally try to screw the pooch.
Absolutely not.
Come on, people.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah.
So this is, I think this is the problem we need to fix first. Because so long as we have the ghost of Reaganomics hovering over our heads, mm-hmm. giving people this ridiculously unproven, disproven even, philosophy or ideology that if you pay CEOs more money, they're going to create more jobs, and that's going to be better for everybody. No. It has been proven, I will go on record right now to say I am not an economics expert, but the one thing that every economist I've ever heard on the radio, television, in a book, whatever, podcast, they all say the same thing. The capitalist economy is based on the continuance of one thing: growth. And you can't have growth if people don't have money. Because money is what makes the economy run. And if people don't have it, they're not spending. And if they're not spending, you're producing for a much smaller group of people.
Yep.
Would you rather produce for only half the people? Or would you like to produce for everybody? I think you'd rather produce for everybody. So the only way the capitalist schema works is when everyone has buying power.
Yeah.
Period. So how do you get there? You get there by making incomes equitable across the board. CEOs should not be making 300 times what their average worker makes.
No.
30 times? Sure. That's what it was like in the 60s and 70s. 300 times? No. 100 times? No. Still too much.
Yeah.
Walmart succeeds because they are the biggest corporate welfare generator in the world. All of their employees need more than what Walmart gives them.
It's so crazy. And people, it's such a great time to have this conversation.
It would be an even better company if their people actually earned decent money.
Oh, it absolutely
like they do at
would.
Costco,
Yeah.
for example.
Oh, yeah. It's such a better experience all around. And it's the same fucking place.
Yeah,
It's the same thing.
it is the same thing.
Minus a blue smock. They're wearing a
Right.
fucking red one.
And a lot
Yes.
less blue painted on the walls.
Yeah. Like, it's really interesting to see right now during the pandemic when we'll just say we're on sort of the ass end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's an
people aren't going back to work. They're like,
Right.
I
They're saying,
can't live
enough.
on this money,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
fuck it.
Right.
I can't go and work for you for the money that you're paying me.
Right.
Like I'm just not going to go because I hate it.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like there are people that have to go to work because they have to go
Right.
to work, right? And
Yeah.
they don't have a choice regardless if they hate it or not.
People that have the choice are saying, to hell with it.
No, I'm not going to.
It's not worth it anymore.
No. And
Because
you can
they've
see
had
it
a
in every
taste
city.
of the...
UBI, man.
Yeah.
They had a taste.
They've had a taste.
That crab money, man. That crab money fucked people up.
It
It
did.
made people see the light.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. It made me see the
it's
light.
not because they're... And, the naysayers are going to say, oh, because they're lazy. No, they're not lazy.
I'm not fucking lazy. I don't have a job. I am not lazy.
If they were lazy, they wouldn't be working in the first place.
It's crazy. Yeah. Like, why don't you go and get a job?
And it's a systemic problem too, because here's an example of what it's funny when you start talking to people, and this is another thing that bugs the shit out of me, is when people will suggest that the reason why things can't be better is because, and then the excuse they come up with is based on not even anecdotal evidence, it's just an idea in their head that they have no proof.
Facebook evidence.
Yeah, exactly, Facebook evidence. But, Darlene and I, my wife and I, actually sit down sometimes and we'll talk to people to try to get to the bottom of why things are the way they are. And my eyes were really opened one time when, because we like to go out for breakfast on the weekends. And one time we went to a Denny's in the northwest of the city. And we got there, and there was this huge lineup to get inside. And we had never seen this before so bad. And it was moving very, very slowly. And when we got to near the front of the line, the person who was seating everybody in the restaurant said, I hope you don't mind, but it's probably going to be at least 30 to 40 minutes before you even see your food once you're seated. And we're like, it's okay. We had a seat, we sat down, we finally got served, we finally got our food, and we could tell that the staff were being run ragged and that they were obviously short-staffed. I wanted to give our server an opportunity to explain just what was going on. And so we asked them very quickly, don't want to steal you from what you're doing, know you're really busy, but what's going on? Why are you guys so short-staffed? And the story that she told me was a real eye-opener because she said, no one in this neighborhood would do this job for this money. No one who works here is from here. We are all from the other side of the city. And because we're the people that would work for this job, there's only one problem, getting here.
Right.
The job starts at 5 in the morning. Transit starts at 5 in the morning. How do I make it to a 5 a.m. job when the first bus doesn't come by my house until 5 a.m.? I can't. So I have to drive. But I can't do that either because I can't afford a car on this money. So what is my alternative? I can hope someone will give me a drive, or I have to take a cab. And she said, and that's what's happened here. People took the job, realized how difficult it would be to get here, ended up having to cab it, and when they got their paycheck, there was nothing left.
Right.
So they quit. And now we're short-staffed. And, if you didn't know that story, you would come to a completely different conclusion why people were quitting their jobs. Because they're lazy or whatever. But no, it's the reality of the environment that forced their hand. You can't survive on minimum wage when you need to take a cab to work.
Absolutely.
Because there's no transit at 4 a.m.
Right.
So this is the kind of problems that we need. And that's kind of why I think more of a helping hand isn't a bad thing, because it gives you the opportunity to go, you know what? I want to become one of those people that isn't going to take that job either.
Right.
Because I have a better education. I could go for the better paying job.
Right.
So that I can get a car and drive to work, or, be able to afford a job that doesn't start at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Do you think, this question just popped into my head, do you think that UBI, if distributed nationally, or even fucking regionally, would inevitably raise, like...
the costs of things?
No. We'll get there, if we've got time, Christ.
Yeah.
But the salaries of places like Denny's, like, let's just say Denny's pays $8 an hour. Let's just say, I don't know what the hell it is, but let's say it is. But now if every one of those employees is making $2,000 a month, just no strings attached.
Right.
And they get to choose, because now they can pay their rent and eat food. Now they have a choice to work a little more where they want to work.
Yes.
Right? Is Denny's then going to have to up their salary?
I believe they would.
Right? So, like...
Because now I don't have to work at Denny's.
No.
Or I don't have to work at Denny's 5 days a week.
Right.
Which means they're going to have to find more workers. And if they're going to have trouble finding more workers that are willing to work for $8 an hour, I mean, they're having that problem now.
They are.
Then that's all I hear in the news for the last 6 months. Wages are inevitably going to have to go up because people have said, I'm not working for that money anymore. Because I don't have to. I think UBI would elevate what companies would have to pay. And the thing that really drives me crazy are all of these naysayers that say, oh, don't be silly, we can't afford to pay people $20 an hour to schlep burgers at McDonald's, because then burgers would cost $10.
Yeah, that's horseshit.
Why then does a burger not cost $10 in Amsterdam when they're getting paid $20 an hour?
Right.
Also, a drive-in burger joint, and I don't know why it has to be Seattle, but it is. It's 2 Seattles in one podcast. A mom and pop, not even a corporate burger place, which, has, everything fucking narrowed down to the penny, what it costs and what they make as a margin. This was a mom and pop burger joint in Seattle that said, we're having a hard time getting workers to do to fill our shifts. From now on, all new workers earn $20 an hour once you pass your probation. You start at, I think it's 16 or 17. You do a 6-week probation or whatever it happens to be. You pass, you're up to 20. To start. Well, they filled all their positions, and I went on their website to see, about their $10 burgers. A cheeseburger is $2.35.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
No. It is total propaganda that paying people a living wage is going to jack the price up of everything to an unreasonable amount of money.
Yep.
No, it won't. And the best part is, those people earning that $20 an hour can now actually afford to eat.
Yeah.
At the burger place if they want.
Oh, man.
So I think that's where we need to go. And I think that's where we're going to leave that topic for now. Unless you have a
No,
closing,
I think we
closing
would be
comment on
remiss
that?
to not talk about the biggest contention towards it.
Okay.
UBI is the inflation, is pull inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Where the debate is that more people have more money,
Mm-hmm.
so the price of things, because of demand, will increase. Thus, the cost of living increases, and then we eventually will get back to the place where we're at the same spot, where there's still poverty because a loaf of bread is now $12 opposed to $1.
Yeah.
So
If everything was left to its own devices, that could happen. But if I understand how our economy works, our government does have the ability to put various financial tools into play to rein inflation in.
oh, it happens. It happens now. There are food items that have ceiling prices that
Yeah.
you can't charge. I think it's things like milk and eggs or shit like that.
Right.
Like staples. So such a thing exists now.
Mm-hmm.
But you would have to do it to everything,
Right.
right?
Well,
okay, maybe not everything,
yes
but
and no,
most
yes
everything.
And no. But here's
but
how
rent
it would work.
and
Well, I'll give you an example of how I think it would kind of equalize itself out. If all of a sudden every adult citizen in this country were making $2,000 more a month than they had yesterday or last month, I think we need to understand not everybody is going to be spending all that money. A majority of people, if they're smart,
Yeah.
are going to be socking that money away
yeah,
for the rainy day that they need it.
right.
Those that are being raised above the poverty line, they're just getting more of the necessities of life and maybe treating themselves to the odd movie and Game Boy or PlayStation or new TV or whatever. But the thing is that if prices then, because of supply and demand, start driving the cost of some of these things up, well, then people are going to stop buying them because they don't magically have enough money to buy a $3,000 TV if they had enough money to buy a $1,500 TV right now. So I think it really does kind of even out.
Well, I think
'Cause you're not going to sell shit if nobody can afford it.
the problem is, or a problem is that everybody now has $2,000 more a month, and the demand for, and I'm not talking about the demand for Game Boys. I'm talking about the demand for fucking orange juice.
Okay.
People right now can't afford to buy orange juice.
Right.
Right? Like you don't. But now if you have all that extra money, maybe you do.
Right.
So demand increases.
Right.
So now
Orange
there
juice
are
goes
less
up.
fucking orange juice. And now the price goes up. But it's not just the orange juice. It's everything. It's fucking eggplants and pizza, and it's all the things now get spent. This is the argument. I'm not saying that I agree or disagree, but the pull inflation that exists creates push inflation, where now just the cost of things is more because there's less of it.
Right.
The supply and demand it turns cyclical. I don't know of any situations involving cash that proves or disproves inflation takes place. I know that there is a system in Mexico, in a rural town, or towns possibly, where they provide the people there food aid. And initially it was food items, oil, beans, rice that were given to them by the government every month.
Right.
Which equated to, I don't know, $20 or whatever.
Yeah.
And the worry was that was going to take place, but the inflation was going to take place, but in fact it didn't. It didn't take place, and they're not really sure why. And in fact, the food that Like, they couldn't really explain why it didn't happen, because you would think inevitably it would happen.
Right.
And what they did find is that those items that they were given, those prices actually went down. Because if you're getting rice from the government,
You don't need to buy
you're
it.
not going to the fucking store to buy rice. Or you have
And if
to
the
buy
government's
a lot
buying it, they're
less.
buying it at wholesale
Right.
and then giving it to you.
Right. Right. You ultimately would have to buy less rice.
Right.
So those prices actually come down. So that example doesn't really line up, because that's not cash. We would be given cash in the UBI model. But it's really very interesting is that it didn't happen there.
Yeah.
And that's the big contention towards that I found anyway, is the worry about inflation. And like, it exists. It's in my head. Like how isn't it going to happen without huge government intervention, which I'm not opposed to, because as we have spoken a whole bunch throughout this podcast, there's going to be a massive requirement for government intervention. We're going to have to change the way people think, the way that people deal with all the things, their neighbor, fucking everything.
And not only that, the thing I'm actually worried about is even if we convince the public that UBI was a good thing, to the point where they actually supported the government implementing UBI, Canadians aren't necessarily disciplined enough at this point to manage UBI anyway, especially if they don't need it. And what I mean by that is there are going to be a lot of Canadians, unless they are offered the opportunity to have a third party help them manage their UBI for when they actually do need it down the road, there would be a lot of Canadians that would take that extra $2,000 a month and blow it.
Right.
Just blow it
Right.
on shit that they don't need, instead of, going to school or putting it aside and investing it or whatever the case may be. You're not going to have that problem with people who are being raised above the poverty line. But for people who don't actually need the UBI because they're earning enough to survive and even to a certain extent thrive with the salaries that they are earning within the family, I'm afraid that they're not disciplined enough to actually put that money away.
But how do you
There's a business
dissuade that?
opportunity to be made there too.
Sure.
I could see banks stepping in and say, "Hey, we'll take care of your UBI for you, so that
Right.
it's nice and big when you do need it."
But you can't. But you
you
also
have to
can't
prove
dissuade
to us
people
that you need
from
it.
blowing that money.
No,
Right? You can't, because that money is intended to help grow the economy. So
True.
all of these new
but that
these
could be the
businesses that
thing
come
that
up.
triggers the inflation, is the sudden mad spending on non-essential things. That could be the thing that triggers it. But never mind that, but when the rainy day finally comes, you got nothing. And now you're going to learn the hard way that you shouldn't have spent that money.
right.
And that's it. You're on your own.
Right.
Sorry. We gave you the UBI. You blew it. So you're on your own. You're still getting the money. So, make do with what you got. But you could have been living pretty good
Right.
with the $18,000 a year you'd have been able to sock away. $20,000 a year, maybe even a little bit more, adjusted for inflation. But, it ain't there. So enjoy your life back under the poverty line until you smarten
Yeah,
up.
that comes along. That comes along with having to change the mentality of people.
Right.
Like
We're not ready
all the
for
facets.
it.
No,
We're
But
not
we're not
ready
ready
for
for any of it.
No,
We're not ready to tax the rich, obviously.
obviously.
Right? Like, we're not ready for a lot of it that
Otherwise,
needs
there
to
would
happen.
be like tiki torch parades up and down the streets of downtown Calgary. every day.
Right.
We're not there.
No.
Not even close. And it's that dream, that American dream that we have been infected with, that suggests if you just work hard enough and pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you can be a success too. You
can
just
be
have to
rich.
work hard. You can be rich.
You'll be rich.
You can be rich.
You're not going to be
And you've got a
fucking
better
rich.
chance of getting hit by a fucking school bus than being the next CEO.
None of you are going to be rich who are listening to this. That's what we need to unteach.
Because if you could, you'd have done it already.
Yeah, right? Yeah, what are you waiting for? Shit for brains?
That's right. You got the big solution, the big magic solution? Do it.
One more thing. I was doing some research and I was looking at how some ideas on how to fund it.
Right.
Because in Canada, they estimate that it will cost about $200 billion
right.
a year.
Yeah.
One of the
Possible
sources of income
Yeah.
was to adding a levy to sugary drinks. A 20% levy on sugary drinks, which would generate $1.7 billion a year.
Isn't that insane?
It just made me laugh. It just made me laugh. Like, holy shit. Imagine how mad some people would be if their fucking Coca-Cola cost 20% more.
Well, it really does boggle my mind that it costs less money on average to fill your face with junk food than it does to fill your face with fruit.
Yeah. That's why we're all dying.
And other good... Yeah, exactly. It's why we're one of the most obese societies in the world. Because we rejigged it.
Yeah, man.
We rejigged the economy.
Yeah, man.
to make it more expensive to survive.
A Big Mac is way cheaper than
Oh my
a
God.
sandwich with real vegetables
Like
in it.
really?
Yeah, it's nuts.
It
It's
is
horrible.
nuts. Can we switch gears now?
If you want to, Carl, we can
All
do
right.
whatever you want. I don't have much really to talk about. It was really, that's all I've been doing. I haven't listened to a single fucking record. I haven't watched movies. I haven't watched TV. Since the beginning of December, I have read 11 books. It's just go.
Wow.
The last time we talked and I just went off about my dismay or disappointment or whatever the hell it was
Yeah.
about reading,
Yeah.
just motivated the hell out of me to
Right.
just go, just keep going.
So now you're like an Olympic reader.
I'm a junkie, dude. Like, I just can't stop. Like, from January 1st to January 5th, I read all of the Foundation series by Asimov. Okay, to be fair, it's the three. I didn't read the ones written in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
But those three.
So
I read them
remind
in
me
4
what those
days.
were again?
Foundation.
Yeah.
Foundation and Empire.
Yes.
Second Foundation.
Yeah. What a great series that
It was pretty good.
too. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was pretty good. The second one was a little...
Yeah.
I didn't really dig the second one.
Right.
I found it... Well,
It's been a while since I read it, so
I think it's
can't
Asimov's
remember
writing.
whether I liked it or not.
I've never read anything by him besides that.
Uh-huh.
And I think he just writes weird.
Right.
Because it was written in fucking the 50s, so it's certainly weirder than it is now. But I also read, like after that, I read To Kill a Mockingbird, which was written in the 50s.
Yes.
But it's not hard to read. So I think it's an Asimov thing who just, here's some big words, and here's some weird language I'm going to use. And
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's just his... But anyway.
I did find it harder to read because he was introducing a lot of things that you had to kind of think about before you could process it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Read a paragraph 7 times.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I know.
There's no room for daydreaming in a book
No.
like that.
No.
Right? Which, for me, inevitably happens. You're like, I think I want French fries. And you've missed something.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, like I went a long way in a book not understanding that something had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it's way too late to go back to try and figure it out. You're just like, okay, well, that's what happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool.
Foundation series. Yeah.
They were cool. The third one was really good. When I got to, it was a 3-book hand job, and it was just building and building and building, and it really, that last line I was like, no. And I know you probably don't remember.
No, I don't.
But I was like, no way.
Right.
Holy Christ.
Yeah.
It was so great. It was so great.
It was the perfect way to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because admittedly, reading the first one, I was like, I don't know. The language, like I said before, it's cool, but it's not super cool. But then I got to the end, and I was like, well, it's a pretty short book. Let's just go for the second one. And the second one I found quite meh. But then the third one was just full blast from the get-go. And it ended very nicely. And I didn't want to read any more Foundation stuff, so I didn't read the other three. But I probably will at some point.
Yeah. I was definitely motivated to read the rest of the Foundation books once I was done with the trilogy, for sure. I can't remember whether I came away from reading them satiated or not. But I kept going, so that's a sign. I didn't stop after just one more. I still read them all.
Sure.
Like every one that I could find. Because then they came up with like precursors to Foundation.
Yep.
Like, prequels and then sequels and then prequels to the prequel. And yeah, it was kind of crazy. But it all kind of made sense. So yeah, Foundation. Anything else?
I'm currently reading 2 books. One of them is Lonesome Dove.
Wow.
It is so fucking good.
Really?
Wow. Yeah.
Give me like a Cole's Notes.
So it's a Western.
Synopsis. Yeah.
It's a Western, and it's about 2 Texas Rangers, or used to be Texas Rangers, who started some outfit in this town called Lonesome Dove, who decide to run a bunch of cattle up to Montana.
Okay.
And the fucking country is wild. So the story is essentially them going from southern Texas to Montana.
In the era of, like, the
Just
early
after the
1800s?
Civil War.
Oh, wow.
Just after the Civil War.
Wow.
Just a bit
So,
after.
yeah, just
after.
literally
Just when the army.
Literally
Yeah.
the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, when the American army is wiping out all of the Indians.
Yeah.
And all the buffalo have just died.
Right.
Like, so that's when. There are buffalo hunters about who haven't quite figured out to get a real job yet.
Yeah.
And they pass a few buffalo until they're all gone. So
Yep.
we're like right there. So whatever year that is.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
So it's as much a history book as it is a story.
Well,
Kind
yeah,
of.
I guess sort of. Yeah,
A
it
glimpse
sort of
into
is.
into that time period.
Yeah, it sort of does.
Interesting.
It was really slow to start.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know for quite a while. Because I went from Foundation to that. Because Foundations were all really short books.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read Stephen King's The Stand last February. And I just loved the length.
What is The Stand about?
The
generally?
superflu.
Oh, okay. That wipes out a lot of people?
All of the people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't remember how many people are left without... You gotta fucking read the
Right,
book.
okay.
It is fast becoming one of my favorite books that
that
I've
right,
ever
eh?
read. That's the second book that I'm reading. I'm reading The Stand again within a year. And it's 1,300 pages long.
Jeez.
Like it's...
Now, didn't they make a
They
TV
did.
series out of it?
They did make a miniseries.
Is it any good?
I have no idea, interest.
No interest.
Not at all. Because it's not going to be.
No.
Not going to be.
No.
How do you take a 1,300 page book?
For somebody that really, really loves a book story, it never is good
No,
enough.
it can't be.
Ever.
Can't be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I went from Foundation to Lonesome Dove, and it's just such a radically different way of writing, obviously, and just the story, the character was different, because Lonesome Dove is a 900 page book. Like, we're not fucking around here either. Like, it's...
Wow.
So it's a bit slow to start.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's building the world and the characters, so you can give a shit. And it's just, it took a while. And I was talking to somebody on Reddit, and I had mentioned to them, and like, because people talk about how great this book is. And I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, where are you? And I told her, she's like, you got about 3 chapters. And she was absolutely right. Yeah, in about 3 chapters, I was like, okay, here I am, and I can't put it down. Yeah, it's really good. It's
Nice.
a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah, I recommend it if you like anything cowboy.
Saw The Matrix.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Ooh. I've
did.
heard nothing about it.
Really?
Oh yeah, like
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not gonna give you any details about the story itself because that just wouldn't be fair. I didn't have extraordinarily high, unrealistic expectations going in
sure.
to the movie because I knew from whence the movie had come. It was just, I think, Lana just decided she wanted to see if she could resurrect the story. And, wanted to see if Keanu and Carrie Ann wanted to be a part of it. And of course they did. Once she told them what she intended to do. And that's all I'm going to say about that. When my wife asked me when the movie was over what I thought of it, I was actually kind of underwhelmed.
Mm.
I don't know why. I can't really explain why.
Sure.
It just, it's like the first Matrix movie was like nothing we had ever seen before. The story was unique. The arc was unique. The reality was unique. The universe was unbelievable. It made you question your own reality.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was that good.
Right.
And that different. And I think even other people said, the following movies, they were good. They continued the story, but they weren't as groundbreaking and as thought-provoking as the original, the first story.
Right.
So when they brought the story to what seemed to be a logical conclusion,
Mm-hmm.
You kind of thought, well, what could they do next? How could they continue this and still make it interesting? And my conclusion is they can't. I mean, they did okay. It wasn't a complete loss of a movie, but I was not wowed
Sure.
by it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
But it was entertaining.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
At least there's that.
Yeah.
And really, that's all I would ever ask for. I'm not looking for it to blow my skirt up, for sure. But if it's entertaining,
It was entertaining.
right? Yeah.
It was entertaining. There was a lot of cool little inside jokes there.
Yeah. See, that's the
Matrix
shit that I
fans.
want, right?
Yeah,
The
it would be
nods
like,
and the shit.
saw what you did there.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of shit that I liked.
Yeah,
Or would like, right?
yeah.
I should go see it. I
Okay.
should go see it in the theater before.
Well, we decided to take advantage of this brand new theater that just opened up in University.
Was it open?
Yes.
Oh.
Nobody knows.
I didn't know it was open yet.
And I think with that, we are going to wrap up episode 5. Money for Nothing. Talkbots.
Talkbots!
See you next time.
Bye!
Bye.